They called him just the janitor. Every day, before dawn painted the sky with streaks of orange, Samuel Hayes pushed open the heavy glass doors of Grantham Industries with his worn-out key. The company was one of the most powerful tech firms in the nation, its sleek building a symbol of progress and wealth. But Samuel didn't belong to the world of polished shoes, tailored suits, and million-dollar deals. He belonged to the world of mop buckets, vacuum cleaners, and a pair of steel-toed boots that had seen far too many winters. To most people who worked in the towering skyscraper, Samuel was invisible. They walked past him as if he were part of the building itself, a fixture like the elevator buttons or the vending machines. Some gave a polite nod, most didn't even notice him. Yet Samuel noticed them. He remembered names, the way people carried themselves, and the quiet sadness in the receptionist's eyes when she thought no one was watching. He saw humanity in every corner, even when humanity often failed to see him. What no one knew was that Samuel wasn't simply a janitor. He had lived a life before this, a near one filled with hardship, loss, and moments of extraordinary courage. But he didn't carry himself as a man who needed recognition. Instead, he carried himself as someone who believed the smallest acts of kindness had power. He left fresh flowers in the lobby when he could afford them, just to brighten someone's morning. He fixed the broken coffee machine in the break room, not because it was his job but because he overheard an exhausted intern whisper that she couldn't survive another day without caffeine. And every Christmas, without ever revealing it was him, Samuel placed envelopes of gift cards in the mailroom for the assistants, security guards, and delivery drivers who were often overlooked. People thought he was just the janitor, but those who were hurting always knew he was something more. The CEO of Grantham Industries, Daniel Whitaker, barely knew Samuel. They crossed paths occasionally, but Daniel was a man constantly consumed by meetings, boardrooms, and the burden of running a billion-dollar company. He was sharp, ambitious, and respected, but also deeply distrusted by the media. Headlines often painted him as ruthless, accusing him of caring more about profit than people. Samuel, however, had once caught him pausing late at night to pick up a photo of his family, staring at it with a weariness in his eyes that told another story. Samuel never judged people by what others said, he judged them by moments when they thought no one was watching. The storm began one autumn morning. Daniel Whitaker was accused of corporate fraud, embezzlement of millions, falsifying reports, and endangering employees. The news spread like wildfire. The once mighty CEO was suddenly the villain of every headline, dragged into court in handcuffs. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, shouting for justice. Employees distanced themselves, investors pulled back, and even his closest advisors began to turn on him. The trial was set to be one of the most publicized in years. It wasn't just about Daniel, it was about the soul of corporate America. Samuel watched all of this unfold quietly as he polished the marble floors of the building that now carried a stain no amount of cleaning could wash away. He didn't know all the details, but something about the accusations didn't sit right with him. He had worked in the shadows long enough to notice the rhythms of truth and lies. He had overheard conversations, seen documents left behind in conference rooms, and most importantly, he knew Daniel's eyes. Those weren't the eyes of a thief. Still, Samuel kept silent. He was just the janitor, after all. Who would listen to him? The first days of the trial were brutal. The prosecution painted Daniel as a greedy manipulator who built his empire on lies. Witnesses were lined up, each one delivering damning testimony. The public believed the narrative after all. It was easier to believe a wealthy man was corrupt than to imagine he might be innocent. Daniel sat in silence, his once proud shoulders slumped, his family sitting anxiously behind him. His young daughter, Emily, clutched her mother's hand, tears brimming in her eyes every time she heard someone call her father a criminal. Then came the moment no one expected. One afternoon, As Samuel emptied the trash bins near the legal offices, he overheard two junior attorneys, a part of the prosecution, laughing in hushed tones. They spoke of fabricated evidence, about a deal with a rival company that stood to benefit if Daniel fell. Samuel froze, his mop handle clutched tightly in his hand. He wasn't a lawyer, but he understood betrayal when he heard it. He realized that Daniel wasn't just fighting for his freedom, he was being framed. Samuel faced a choice. He could stay silent, keep sweeping floors, and pretend he heard nothing. Or he could step into a world where no one believed a janitor had a voice. The next morning, Samuel walked into the courthouse. He wasn't wearing a suit, just his cleanest uniform. The room buzzed with chatter until the bailiff announced there was a surprise witness for the defense. Samuel Hayes, the attorney said. Laughter rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously, delighted by the absurdity. The judge raised an eyebrow. The prosecution smirked, and Daniel looked utterly confused. But Samuel wasn't shaken. He stepped forward, hands steady, and told the truth. He described what he had overheard, the suspicious conversations, the shredded documents he had pieced together from trash bins late at night, and the patterns he had noticed long before the trial. He spoke with the calm authority of a man who had spent his life being ignored, only to learn that when he finally did speak, people would listen. At first, the courtroom dismissed him. "He's just the janitor," someone whispered. But then Samuel pulled out evidence he had quietly saved: copies of discarded memos, time-stamped logs, and names of those who stood to profit from Daniel's downfall. The room grew silent. The smirks disappeared. Even the judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing as Samuel laid out a picture of corruption that pointed not at Daniel, but at those accusing him. It was the kind of testimony no one expected: simple, clear, and irrefutable. The janitor had turned the trial upside down. By the end of that day, Daniel's defense had momentum. Investigators followed Samuel's leads, uncovering layers of betrayal and corporate espionage. Within weeks, the truth unraveled. Daniel was acquitted, his name cleared, while several high-ranking executives from rival firms were indicted instead. The world erupted with headlines: "The janitor who saved a CEO, unsung hero of the corporate trial," and they called him just the janitor, but he changed everything. When Daniel walked free, he didn't rush to the cameras or the waiting journalists. He walked straight to Samuel. With tears in his eyes, he shook his hand and whispered, "You saved my life. Not just my freedom. My daughter will grow up knowing her father is an honest man, because of you." Samuel only smiled. "I just did what was right." But the world wouldn't let him remain invisible anymore. Samuel's story spread far beyond the courthouse. He became a symbol of integrity, proof that kindness and courage could come from the most unexpected places. Companies across the nation invited him to speak. Universities wanted him to share his story, and people began to realize that no one is ever just anything. Yet Samuel never let the fame change him. He still showed up at Grantham Industries before dawn, mop bucket in hand, humming softly as he polished the marble floors. Because to him, being the janitor wasn't something to escape, it was something to be proud of. It was a reminder that greatness isn't found in titles or wealth, but in the choices we make when no one is watching. And for the first time in his life, when people passed Samuel Hayes in the hallway, they didn't look through him. They looked at him. They smiled. They said thank you, because they finally understood. He was never just the janitor. He was the man who proved that humanity, in its quietest form, could shake the foundations of power and turn the world upside down.